did very well with that. In 1969, they went public and dropped the Gibson's franchise and became Howard Brothers Discount Stores. When I graduated from Harding in 1973, I went to work at the discount stores and served as vice president there till we sold it in 1978 to Gamble's Cogmo, which was a department store company out of Minneapolis. Decided they wanted to get the discount store industry. We'd grown it to 78 stores when we sold it in 1978, and stayed with them a little while after that and grew it to 102 stores. They, after a couple of years, sold it to the Wicks Company, and then the Wicks Company closed all those stores about 2 years later. And you might ask, the reason for that was because they were from California and Sam Walton was still from Arkansas. So Walmart, of course, outpaced us. When we went public in '69, we raised like $10 million. In 71, Sam went public and raised about $30 million. And so they were all, every time we would raise money, it waited a year and raise a lot more because of what we did. And so he was able to certainly outpace us and make it the powerhouse that it is today. Give him great credit. In the meantime, as a side business, we were involved in about 20 different businesses over the course of time, but one of the ones that he loved the most was the publishing company. He was a songwriter, and in 1969 he decided to start Howard Publishing to create a church hymnal to put his songs in, because there weren't any new hymnals being written or anything like that. And some of you may be familiar with Songs of the Church, and that was the one that he came out with, and actually it was released in '71. He worked on it a couple of years before it was ready. We came out with another version in 1990. None of the songs have changed at all during that period of time, so it was still fine to have the same hymnal between '71 and '90. But by '90 we started to see, or the late '80s, we started to see the changing landscape of church songs. And so we came out with a new hymnal called Songs of the Church 21st Century Edition in 1990. And within 4 years, of course, it had been, I mean, the hymnals before that were back in the 30s and 40s, 50s. And then ours, lasted this 71 to late 80s. But if you actually could find a copy of that hymnal, the 21st Century Edition, you'd see what we actually added were camp songs, because that was the kind of songs that churches were singing during that period of time. By '92, just a couple of years after that hymnal came out, we saw that the songs were changing again, and they came to be, much like they are today, contemporary Christian songs that were the new songs. So we came out with another hymnal in 1994 that had, the top Christian copyright licensing songs in it. That hymnal is still sold today.
You guys probably don't even hold a hymnal much anymore, but in, I don't know, somewhere in the early 2000s, we turned it all into soft praise, is what it was called, and it's the computer programs that you guys are. Do any of you hold a songbook? Have you held a songbook? Have you ever held a songbook in church before? Very rarely for this age group. Even when our grandchildren travel places and they go to a really small church that might have some hymnals, they'll open it and they'll see their papa's name in it, because we don't even have it at our church. Everything's on an overhead, and probably what you guys are used to. So we do have it all a computer version now online.
So back to the history. So that the hymnal thing was a garage thing. He just sold those out of the garage, and he had one lady that helped him with the billing and packing, and me and my sisters and Chrys, after we got married, we used to use his station wagon to take the books to the post office to mail to churches, all over America. And but again, that was just kind of a hobby and done on the side. We've eventually sold about 3 million hymnals, so it did do very well over those years. So we got out of retail in 1980-ish when we no longer worked at the discount stores, and we said that, we're never going to get into retail again. Well, that was just, dog eat dog and a tough business. Well, I went out in I guess it was about 83, and saw the Price Club in San Diego. And today it's known as Costco. And I did some research on it, and I came back to my dad and I said, Dad, I told you, we said we were never going to get into retail again, but there's this thing called warehouse clubs that Sam Walter will never do. And so I think we can do this. It's different enough that it's not going to be in competition with him, so I think we can coexist. So let's start a warehouse club business. And so about the time we announced the first one we were going to build, of course, Walmart announced their first Sam's. So here we went again, Sam's and Super Saver Wholesale Warehouse Club, what I recall. We built 21 in 18 months, and we were about to go public. And of course, Sam saw what was fixing to happen again that we experienced in our earlier lives. And so he called and said, we'll just buy you instead of letting you go public. We'll make you an offer you can't refuse, and we'll take those. And so they bought those stores from us in 1987. Oh, probably a third of them were in common cities. About half of those, they closed theirs because ours was in a medical location. The other half, they closed ours because theirs was in a medical location. And today, a number of those are still in operation that were ours. But of course, Sam's is incredible, profitable business for Walmart today, and we just added to the pile. That's all we did. But so after we got out of that, in always between these transitions, we also had a real estate development company where we built shopping centers for our discount stores and for the Super Saver warehouse clubs. And we kept that as a personal holding company of the family. So as we sold the companies, we still had the real estate. So I always did that on the side, and I did it full time in these transitional periods. In 1990, Chrys and I decided that, along with a couple of friends that we were acquainted with, decided that we wanted to take Howard Publishing and turn it into a real publisher instead of just something out of my dad's garage. And so we started acquiring authors and came up with a series of gift books called the Hugs books, Hugs for Mom, Hugs for Dad. We eventually sold about 10 million of those over that decade, and about 32 different titles.
We were hugging everybody by the time it was over. Hugs for coaches, anything we could think of, we'd do a book, and they would sell. It was like a machine. It was something we created. We came out with 4 to begin with, and then from then on it didn't matter what we said. We could have hugged a dog. Well, we did do Hugs for Dogs.
Korie and Willie.
Korie and Willie wrote that one.
Hugs for
And we turned it into Hugs for Pet Lovers eventually.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those phenomenons like Duck Dynasty has been when the Hugs books came out. Prior to that, gift books were always just a quote book. There was nothing in them but a quote book. So there wasn't a genre that people related to when you said, I want to get a gift book. And so when we came out with these, they consisted of 7 heartfelt stories, 7 scriptures, 7 quotes. And it was just a little, and had a cute cover. And it just hit a niche that had never been hit. Now if you go to look for a gift book, you'll see lots of books who've copied us with that format. They'll have a story, they'll have pictures, they'll have things like that. So that series put us on the map in the publishing world.
And then we began to acquire other publishers. We did a book with Rick Warren, a bunch of contemporary Christian music artists that we did their books for them and stuff like that over the years. In 2006, Simon & Schuster, which is a New York publisher, decided that they wanted to, actually it was 2005 when they made the decision, they wanted to either start a Christian publisher or acquire one. And someone that we knew within the industry, they had talked to about who do you think we ought to consider looking at if we decide not to start one ourselves. And he told them about our gift book part. And of course that interested them very much because they didn't really have a gift book division. Where the bookstores at that time, there were probably 5,000 bookstores in America, but there were 65,000 gift stores. And so they saw this as a great opportunity to not only acquire a Christian publisher, but to acquire a holding market so that they could put their books and our books into all the gift stores around the nation. And so they made us an offer we couldn't refuse, and so we sold the publishing company to Simon & Schuster. They asked me to come on board as executive vice president of Simon & Schuster and the publisher of the Howard Books imprint. They changed the name from Howard Publishing to Howard Books, and I stayed with them 3 years before my kids saw that they really needed some help with the Commander business as it was beginning to grow. So I guess that's pretty well the history of the business end of it.
Business-wise, and we laugh. Korie is often asked, well, they're all, the girls, the women on the show are often asked, how did these wild and bearded guys get such adorable, beautiful wives? And someone will always say that they're gold diggers, they're after their money. And we have to laugh because, you know, there was no money in the Duck Commander business when all of these women married, when Korie met Willie.
And they didn't have beards.
And they didn't have beards, and they were all really, really cute, and still are, if we can ever get them to shave the beard. They've got those cute dimples that you see in all the grandkids, and super cute. But we laugh because Korie grew up, she tells people the reason that she can run Duck Commander is she grew up watching this, watching her dad and Papa, Howard, over dinner, over fish, over whatever we were having. It was just a constant business meeting between the two of them, and you can see the variety of businesses they were involved in, and he left out the jewelry store, the electronic company, and the, oh, I can't even think of all of them, just a number of businesses. So Korie was able to sit at the feet of Alton Howard, Johnny's dad, who was an amazing entrepreneur. Alton's brother, W.L. Howard, both of these men came out of just poverty, and W.L. ended up being the mayor of Monroe for 17 years, and these guys just self-taught, you know, no college, just self-taught men who rose above the ranks of, in not just the business, but also in the spiritual world with songbooks and preaching and that sort of thing. So Korie was able to see a lot of that in action, and now she's able to apply that to her life in the Duck Commander world and the Duck Dynasty world, which is its own business now. First
connection with the Robertson clan, you might think it was when Korie met Willie. But actually, Kay, when she and Phil had some issues back when, if you're reading the book, you get all the details about that. I won't go into that right now, but anyway, they had some issues, and Phil left them. And
Phil kicked them out.
Kicked them out. This was before he became a Christian. And in fact, this incident is what turned him to the Lord. But Kay came seeking help at our church. And so my dad gave her a job at Howard Brothers Discount Stores. And so her office was actually across from mine, and she worked in the insurance department, and there was already a K in there, and her full name is Marcia Kay Caraway, and she was Robertson, and so Marcia Kay Robertson, and so we called her Marcia. So I knew her for Marcia for years, and of course she went back to Kay when she left the company there. So that was our beginning of knowing them. So they, while she was working there, Phil drove up one day, and she saw him out in the parking lot and went over to the car. You know, her friend said, "Do I need to call the cops?" And she said, "No, but just stand there and be ready to call them if something happens here." And she walks over, and he's leaning over the steering wheel, and she thinks he's drunk. And she says, "What you want, Phil?" And he looks back, and he's bawling, crying. And he says, "I want my family back." And so she said, "Well, we need to go talk to the preacher." And she went to our minister at the time, Bill Smith, who had already been to see him a couple of times before. And they studied the Bible like daily, all day for about 5 days. And then he was baptized and never looked back from there. So that was our beginnings with the Robertson family. Then, I'll let you tell about Korie Willie.
And then, of course, Korie, we have run a Christian camp for many, many years. That was another vision of Johnny's dad. He started a Christian youth camp in 1967. And I went there as a camper, a little kid, and I met Johnny. And then, as we got older, are y'all campers out here? Anybody love camp? I love camp. I still direct the camp. I still live out there for 5 weeks this summer. But so I met Johnny there, and then as time went on, I'm working and doing things, and then we have kids, and then one summer at camp, we always had the moonlight hike, where the guys asked a girl to go on the hike. And I think Korie was in the 3rd grade, and she had a diary that year, and she has one entry in that whole diary, and it says, "I met the cutest boy at camp today, and his name is Willie Robertson."
Well, actually, Jess then.
Jess Robertson. We called him Jess. He changed his name to Willie about 11 years ago.
His name is
Willie
Jess.
Willie Jess
That's his
Robertson.
middle name. So he grew up as Jess.
Right.
And just all of a sudden one day he said, "I'm not Jess anymore, I'm Willie."
Because it's Jace, Jep, Jess, and it was like beginning to be problems at work. So he one day, this is another story, Willie and I were on the radio promoting camp, because he and Korie were helping me at camp, and we were on the radio, and we introduced ourselves, and I'm Chrys Howard, Camp Yoga, and he said, "And I'm Willie Robertson." And I'm like, it's like, because I'd never heard Willie. Never heard him say that before. So right there on the air, he changed his name to Willie Robertson. Anyway, so she met Willie as a camper when she was in the...
And he asked her on the moonlight hike.
He asked her on the hike. And then they went their ways and did different things. And she dated a boy through high school, a football player. And we loved him. He was just great and super great guy. And Korie and Willie were kind of in the same... He's 2 years older, so sort of in the same youth group, but a little bit older. And then when she was a senior, they all of a sudden started dating, to our surprise, because we loved Jess. He was in the youth group, funniest kid you've ever met. I mean, he's the kid you want in your car going anywhere, even today, because you're laughing for 6 hours. I mean, solid, nonstop. So I loved him, but then in October of that year, Korie has one of those young birthdays. She was only 17 as a senior. Oh wait, no, she already graduated. That's right, this was in that summer. And they come and tell us that Willie says he's going to marry Korie. Now, she's just 17.
And I said, "No, you're not."
All ready to go to Harding. We're all got everything ready. We're so excited now. She's going out to Harding. This is going to be great. And then he comes and says that he and Korie are going to get married. That did not go over real well with us at all. If you read her book, she tells the story. And Johnny, who never raises his voice, actually raised his voice at Willie over this.
Never before and ever since.
No, he doesn't.
That was my daughter.
He really doesn't, yeah. And so anyway, they actually decided, we finally, after 2 days of back and forth, we said, okay, we're all in. And we had just a great, gorgeous, beautiful wedding on January 11th. And then they both went to Harding, and Willie's the only one of the brothers with a college degree.
Let me tell you what he told me when we had our little discussion. He knew how to get me and just wanted to egg it on. So I said, "Well, how are you going to support her?" And he said, "I don't know, we'll live on love." And I said, "Well, where are you going to live?" And he said, "Well, I'll probably get a trailer and move behind my dad's house." And so that was his approach to thinking that would make me feel real good about marrying my daughter when she's only 17 years old. But about 2 days later, we saw that it was inevitable, and he was a great guy, and so we started planning the wedding.
Yes. We planned the wedding, and it was great, and it's been 20 years now and 5 kids and a great relationship. And I told some other groups earlier, our first trip to New York with them after the show became famous, this was like within 6 months of the show. And I went to New York with them to make some appearances. And Cy, did I tell this morning in this class? No. And Cy has the frozen squirrel in the ice chest.
Did you say that in chapel? Okay,
No.
go ahead.
Okay. So Cy's got a frozen squirrel in an ice chest. And this is like the first
To
time.
cook on the Today Show.
Yeah. This is the first time they have been to New York, any of them. I mean, I've been to New York, several times, and Korie had, but none of the Robertson had. So it was just the funniest adventure from the minute we got on the plane. We pulled up in the limousine, had picked us up, and we've got the frozen squirrel inside, and all that. And so we pull up, and the doorman is sitting out of the hotel, and he's got the top hat and the tails and coat and all that. And Kate bumps me, and she said, "That guy is rich." And I'm like, "Hey, that's the doorman. He just works here. He's not anybody, So the whole week was just hilarious with them. And then at some point, we're riding the limo, and Phil looks up at me and he said, "Well, Chrys, do you still think they shouldn't have gotten married?" And I said, "Well, Phil, it's been 20 years of other stuff, but no, I'm excited they're married." And so life has gone on from there. But good lesson to all you guys to ask and don't say we're just going to get married. The approach could be a little bit different. Does anybody have any other questions? Y'all are a quiet bunch this afternoon.
I told him you'd ask a lot of questions, so be thinking.
Come on, think.
I would like you to relate, because through this whole engagement process, you talked a little bit about, you went to visit Phil and Kate about Korie and Willie getting married.
Well, we thought we would, see what they thought. Of course, we forgot he married Kay when she was 15. So they were no help at all.
None whatsoever.
No, they were like,
So
"Oh."
why not?
He said, "Oh, they'll be fine."
They'll be fine in a trailer in the backyard.
They'll be fine. So we were like, okay, we're barking up the wrong tree here if we want help with this. But no, that didn't work. Of course, there wasn't a whole lot we could say. I was 18 when we got married. But I had a husband who had a pocket with a plan. To this day, do you have your pocket with you?
Got my pocket.
To this day, this is the man
My notes.
who has notes in his pocket all the time. And that's how, I've always said, I don't know how he runs so many businesses, but he's very organized in his brain. So even, which I should have noticed that when we first went to my mom and dad, and Daddy says, how are you going to support her? And I did not know. He pulls this thing out of his face, like a whole list of things. So that should have been my first clue that I'm marrying somebody with that type A personality of listing everything. And so for my parents, they were like, "Hey, yay, go marry her," because one of the things on the list was I'll pay for her to go to Harding. So my parents were like, woohoo, which is a little different than when Willie came to us about Korie. But we didn't argue too long. It was just like a day or two, and then we were on board and supportive and all that good stuff. So.
One of the questions one of the students submitted was, how have you been able to keep your Christian values along with your business and keep those things balanced?
Well, in the business, we really think living your Christian principles in business is what makes you successful. People know that you can be trusted. They know that you're going to do what you're going to say. And that's the kind of people want to do business with. And so, we've never thought that money was important. And so we were never, and the Robertsons have never been influenced by money. And so it's easy, if you get your head straight about money, then it's easy to make the right decisions in business because you're not worried about what's going to happen financially with the decision. You're going to do the right thing at every turn. And usually that works out really great, and it has.
Which business venture of yours made you the most nervous going into it, and why did you decide to do it anyways?
Well, my father said we need to get in the oil and gas drilling business, and this was at the height. This was back in, I guess, the 80s when there were more drilling rigs on the scene than ever in history, and he thought that this was going to keep going this way. And so we got in it and bought a couple of rigs and started drilling right before the crash. And so I was worried that that might happen. And so not only was that thing I was most worried about, it proved to be one of the most risky things that we got involved in, and it did not turn out well. You know, people say, wow, y'all got such a successful family. We were probably involved in, or no, we were involved in over 20 pretty major businesses, and really only 3 or 4 were highly profitable. The others were marginal or losers. So we had to do a lot to find those 3 great ones.
I don't know if that's encouraging for you in business but that's the reality.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the beginning of your show. I know that when we first went on, they tried to add some different things to your show, and you guys didn't like that. I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Right. At the beginning of the show, and for one thing that everybody needs to understand, people who are not faith-based people are not going to believe like we believe. They just can't, and it's almost crazy that we think that they should, because they're not. They're not believers. They don't read the Bible. They don't have the same backgrounds that we have, so they're not going to do that. So the Robertsons don't fault the executives at A&E or the production company is actually in California, where A&E is in New York. So if you have ever been to New York and to California, they are so different culturally. We were in New York earlier this week, and just walking the streets, and Korie and I were saying, you know, if you walk the streets of New York, you're in a whole different cultural dynamic than walking the streets of LA. So already they're dealing with LA personality types who eat fresh, clean food, and New York personality types who are fast talkers and move quickly. It's just it's a whole different, you know, culture. And so they don't fault any of them for the decision they make. They really realize that they just don't know. So at the very beginning of the show, the very first episode, they did try to bleep a couple of the characters, and Korie was one of them. And I was like, what? Korie didn't say that, or what was supposed to be said under that bleep, you know? And so when they questioned them, they just simply said, well, we thought that would be funny. Because to them, when they do that on other shows, people think that's funny. So it wasn't like they were out and out trying to discredit them in any way. They really truly thought that would be a funny addition to the show.
Thought we wouldn't care.
And that, you know, we wouldn't care. But of course, Phil quickly informed them that that's not the way this show is going to run, and they pretty quickly conceded to that, and it wasn't a problem. We don't hear any bleeping anymore. So it really wasn't about them trying to discredit it. It's just really more about that they don't understand. It's a different culture for them.
And they had the prayer at the end of the show too.
Prayer at the end of the show, which was a natural thing. Of course, they said, well, they wanted to have the dinner scene, and they were like, well, what would y'all do? And of course, Willie said, well, this is when we would pray. I said, okay, we'll try that, you know. So they did, not realizing what a huge hit that would be and how successful. And of course, at first they took off the in Jesus' name part, which is how we typically pray. But
their explanation was that they just didn't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
And that they thought invoking Jesus' name might offend some portions of America. And so again, Phil made a phone call and said that that's the way we pray, and you need to portray it the way we pray. And, you know, sometimes they still do it for some reason. I don't know if it's different editors or whatever, but most of the time it is in there, but every now and then you'll see that they still do it. And of course, all the reruns, people get lost on, they listened to one last night and they said, they cut that out last night. Well, they don't realize they're watching a show that was from the first season. So, but for the most part, they never leave it out now at all.
Take you as you are, not change
Right.
you are.
Right. And there were a few things at the very beginning. I was with them filming an episode at the very beginning where they were playing football. I don't know if any of you remember that. It's one of the very first episodes. And the teenagers were out there with Papa Phil. And one of the producers came over and asked me if it would be okay if they argued with Phil. And I said no.
They protested when he told them what to do. They said, no, we ain't doing that.
They won't do that. They wouldn't do that. They won't even do it for a TV show. that would just not be something. And they said, okay, well, we'll figure out how to make it work.
They were concerned that without drama, like in so many of these other reality shows, and they couldn't get anybody to do any drama. Because there is no
All
drama.
reality shows, if you watch them closely, they're drama-based. And that's what makes them be successful. Even if you watch, say, Yes to the Dress, if some of you girls watch it, which I love, and the drama is she going to pick this, is she not? So even though it's a small amount of drama, that's what makes that be marketable. And so for Duck Dynasty, very early, they figured out that they weren't going to have that. They even asked the wives, if the wives would argue and stuff, and they were like, no, just not going to happen. We're not going to do it. And so why Duck Dynasty is working is because they have humor. So either you have to have humor or you have to have drama. That's what all TV shows and movies are, what make them be successful.
And what totally surprised them is that the family dynamics is something people want to watch.
Right.
That's not really in much of any other TV shows. So the family dynamics, the close relationships,
And they're funny, and that's different. Usually you will see that in a sitcom, but not see that in a reality show. Honey Boo Boo's not that funny, So these guys truly in real life are for the funniest people. Alan, you don't see that much. He's the bearded brother, the oldest one, who was the preacher at our church for 20 years. Is incredibly funny. I'm not kidding. These are guys you can't sit down and eat dinner with. You're laughing so hard. So when A&E came down and started visiting, they're like, okay, wow, we are onto something here. We have got some really funny guys, and we think we can make this work. And
a crazy Uncle Si.
And you've got a crazy Uncle Si. That's really crazy, Uncle Si. So it works, and they just play up that humor and a little bit of drama. There's always some kind of a little bit, but just between Jace and Willie, and I think the thing that shocks people the most is how funny Willie is, because he with the show, when they shot the first pilot, of course he's the CEO, which he is, and so someone's kind of got to be the straight man in the whole thing, but he in real life is the funniest one of all of them. Funny guy.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk a little bit about your role with this?
It's okay.
I thought you said ma'am, I'm sorry.
I did.
No, go
I did.
That's all you can.
She asked about my role in the company. I came on board to help them with their contracts. They didn't really have any contracts to speak of, much before the show. We did do some licensing, some before, and so I handled all the licensing and dealt with the manufacturers and stuff that wanted to license the Duck Commander name. When the show came out, then it just exploded, and so we hired an agency to help us with that. I still review contracts, really to say on behalf of the family, that's going to be okay. But, there's lawyers involved and all that kind of stuff now that review everything. We have a lawyer on staff now to review all the contracts and stuff like that. So, and special projects, just whatever needs to be done. We're working on what we're going to do with the warehousing right now. Before the show in 2011, we made about 60,000 duck calls that year. And the year that the show aired, which was 2012, we made about 300,000 duck calls, and thought, well, there's not that many duck calls in the nation, so duck, well, there is more than that, but not a lot of them. Not every guy who duck hunts blows duck calls. So we thought we'd saturate the market, but because of Duck Dynasty and because every little kid wants a duck call now, last year we had to make 1.3 million duck calls.
Realize this is 2 years, 2012 to 2014, went from 60,000, 2013, to over 1 million duck calls.
And
That's a lot of duck calls.
a story, so one of the projects we're working on now, when I was talking about the warehouse, before the show, the warehouse rents a 35,000 square foot warehouse, and it was our Howard Publishing warehouse. There was right after we closed, I put the building on the market for sale, and there was a flood coming. And of course, Phil's house is on the river, and Willie went out there and said, "Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna lose our inventory if we don't get this moved anywhere." He said, "Hey, I'll see if my father-in-law will let us put the stuff in there." And so they put it in there and never left. So that's when they moved from the river to town and moved in their office, into the warehouse there. So they moved their offices in there. There was actually an interim time where it went to, the offices were at Willie's house when they brought it in, but the warehouse was there. But they only used about 5,000 square feet of it. After the show began, we used the entire 35,000 square feet, and it couldn't hold it all, and so we contracted with a warehouse in Indiana to manage our inventory for all the online sales to consumers and to our retailers. So everything that's shipped to an individual or shipped to Walmart is shipped out of Indiana. Now that entire 35,000 square foot building is full again of inventory, but it's just for our little gift store that's there at the offices. Sometimes we'll have 3,000 fans a day come to the warehouse, and so it takes a 35,000, well, I guess about 30,000 of it is warehouse and offices, and the store's about 5,000 square feet. But
We had no store prior to this. If people wanted to buy something for Duck Commander, they would just come up to the warehouse and somebody run in the back and get them what they wanted. Well, very quickly, when the show took off, people started coming like they wanted to visit Duck Commander store where we don't have a store. So quickly framed up a little small store.
It was about the size of from that
Yeah,
over
just
there.
over in that corner like that. And now it's
It's about 3 times.
three
the
times
size.
as big as this to accommodate the up to 3,000 people who come through there a day. Now, during the school year, we haven't had that many, but during spring break times, the 3 weeks that were spring break, and then all of last summer, I mean, Willie's had to buy all the property around it for parking. And then it's like you're at Disney World. It's got that line that goes through just to get in to the store. And they've opened a little watering hole next to it so people can just get a drink because they're in that line in the hot Louisiana heat for a long time just to get in the store. So all of this has happened in just 2 years. It's quite a phenomenon for sure. And when Johnny came on board, he came on doing one job, but within the 2 years, it's just changed over and over again because of the needs that the company has. And his experience is varied enough that, Korie can say, "Dad, do this or do that." And it's just really a great blessing for us. It's just that God thing for us that we closed down our publishing company right when this was taking off. It's like, thank you, God, because we couldn't have helped Korie and Willie if we were still trying to run our publishing company. And because of that, then I'm able to work with the kids, as I said earlier today, as their tutor on the set, and travel when John, Luke, and Sadie travel to speak out, and they're not speaking with Cy or one of the other adults, and I travel with them, so they've got somebody with them. And it's just a great blessing that we're free to do that now.
And my first involvement was with Duck Commander was in 1997. We had a website for Howard Publishing, and I went to Phil and I said, "Have you ever heard of the internet?" He said, "No, what is it?" And so I told him about it, and I said, "You need to be doing this too." And he said, "I don't even own a computer, never am." And I said, "Well, you're crazy if you don't do this." And he said, "You do it." And so I started duckcommander.com in 1997 and gave it to Korie and Willie, probably 10 years ago. 7 or 8 years ago, I guess.
For a small fee.
Yeah, a very small fee.
Yeah.
And today we wish we would have kept it. So, because it's very successful on its own, just the duckdynasty.com.
Of course, if you watch the show, you know Phil doesn't have a cell phone or a computer or any of those things, but when I was down helping them write their cookbook, of course I'd take my computer down. They had to get Wi-Fi at their house now because people are down there and they're filming.
The
And
filming has to have Wi-Fi.
so he has to have Wi-Fi, so they've got it down there now, but they still don't know it. I think Kate got a computer, but I don't think she knows.
I send her emails, the general emails, and anytime I see her, you see that email, she says, no, I haven't looked at that in a while.
I don't think, unless one of the grandkids are down there, they don't look at it. So but when I was down there one day with my computer set up and I was typing as Phil was talking, and I told Phil, I said, Phil, I know you don't have a computer, but aren't you glad I have one? Because the world has to move on, you know, in spite of you. And of course he laughed, he said, I am glad. And then later that day I went out to my car and it wouldn't start. And I was like, oh my word, here I am, and Phil's in there, like that chair you see him sitting in the show, literally that's where he is all the time. He has 2 channels on his TV, Weather Channel and Fox News. And he watches foreign series of movies over and over again. Or he studies the Bible, but he's in that chair all the time. I was like, oh my word, I'm gonna go back in there and get Phil to come out and look at my car. And I just felt terrible about that, and because I'd been there working with him all day and making him find me recipes and all that. But when I went in and I said, Phil, my car won't start, and he spent an hour and a half out there working on my car. I mean, and that's the thing I think for people to realize, that they are just the greatest people, super nice, love everybody, their home's always open, and Kay's always cooking something. Literally, you can go down there at any point and eat biscuits or chicken and dumplings or something. It's just a great atmosphere. So this is truly an authentic family in what they're representing to the world. And
you see those dinner meals, she cooks every one of them. And sometimes because of the scheduling, they'll say we're going to have 2 dinner meals today. And have one at 2 and one at 6. And so she puts that big spread on 2 times that day.
She'll make sure, she may not cook every single thing. She has some people to help, but she makes sure the main course is something that she cooks. She wants them to eat her food.
And your question, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is it surreal to walk down the street and see maybe your daughter's face on a t-shirt or a coffee mug? Because I know that the merchandising part of Duck Dynasty has exploded.
Yes, it's crazy.
Very surreal. I think the biggest thing is seeing them on magazines and
billboards and all that.
billboards and things like that. I don't know if you ever get used to that, you know, with your kids and grandkids. It's very surreal feeling. Totally unexpected, yeah.
Another question? Yeah, I was gonna ask about Size Wife. Like, I know that I've not ever seen her. Is she one of the, I know you talked about some different places where you've been on the show. Is she ever been on there?
She was on the Mia episode of the family reunion, just really briefly. Her name is Christine, and like the last place we went, I took a picture with the Texas Motor Speedway, the DC 500, and so it got on the internet, and people were saying, "Are you Size Wife? Is this Size Wife?" You know. So no, I'm not Size Wife, but her name is Christine, and she doesn't really want to be a part of the show, and so she does her
When it
thing.
started, they asked her, "Do you want to be on the show?" And she said, "Not really." And Size says she was the only smart one.
Yeah, so their lives have changed, as you can tell, dramatically. People come right up to their house all the time and knock on the door, and so they really had to figure out a different way to live, and they're celebrities. So she's just not interested in being on the show, but she's very supportive of Cy, and she's there with him at things she can be at. Yeah.
Yes.
Not too long ago, heard about a controversy about a comment that Phil made, and I just wanted to know how that took a toll on the show and you guys as a company.
It really didn't take much to toll on the show. That this season has been less than the previous season. A&E called us right after the controversy, and after everything was okay again, and said that, we're not concerned at all about the show, the fact that it's down. This is the season of the year when all the shows are lower than they are other seasons. And we went from an average of like 8.5 to like 6.5 million viewers, but still continuing to be twice the number of the number 2 most popular show on cable. So we're still way out above the other, on that night, the other shows that air. And so it's doing great.
The media would like you to think that that affected it, and that that's the way they'll spin it when they, report about it, but it really hasn't had that much effect on the show.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yes, sir.
The patent that was lost in Phil's shed, how long was it back there?
The what now?
The patent, for the first duck call?
Oh, the patent for the first time.
Now,
One of the episodes, they go into his shed out
Yeah.
and look for the patent.
oh yeah, he didn't know where it was. I mean, 20 years.
They built duck calls back in that shed until this more recent history.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a shed behind his house.
Yeah, that was probably missing 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all mentioned that the media can spin things. How do you guys maintain your faith with all that spinning that's going on?
She asked how we maintain our faith with all the media spin going on. We really just ignore it. Just don't pay any attention to it, don't respond to it. We never try to straighten them out because you can't. Anything you say, they just want to take it another level. So the only way you end it is say nothing. And you just, if anybody asks you anything about it, you say, we trust our faith, we trust our Lord, and we're not concerned about their spin. Yes.
You said that you got out of the book company right before Duck Dynasty, Duck Commander stuff started. Have you thought about getting into another business right at this point?
No.
No.
No, he has not. When we got out of Harding and Johnny graduated in '73, I was still a little bit younger, so went on to college where we moved to. From the time he got out of business, he has owned and operated, as you can see, lots of businesses. When you own businesses, you're responsible for lots of people's lives and their welfare and their family's welfare, and that's what he had done for 40 years. So he's very happy to go to work now and let Willie worry about everybody who works there, all the paychecks that have to come in and all that sort of thing. So I don't think are we? No.
We're happy.
We're not. As a matter of fact, Korie just started a clothing store some of you may have read about, called Duck and Dressing. And Johnny had told her, don't do it, and don't get into the retail business. And
So she put me in charge of it.
and so then she decided to do that and puts him in charge of opening the store. And so he did that. But again, it's all on Korie though. It's opened with great success and been a lot of fun.
Question back there.
How did the whole show start?
How did it happen? Okay, how did Duck Dynasty begin? Duck Dynasty, the show, right? The show. The show? The show. And you might say, how are these people so comfortable in front of the camera? How can you just let people do this to you? Well, they had DVDs, duck hunting DVDs, for about 30 years. So they've been behind the camera or in front of the camera for 30 years. Their son Jeff films their DVDs that they've made and sold, mainly just to duck hunters. They were in Walmart, some of them were, but duck hunters, sporting goods stores, and direct duckcommander.com.
These were pretty hardcore hunting though. Has any of you ever seen one of their hunting videos? I mean, Phil bites the head of a duck off. I mean, it's I never watched them because they were rough.
So they had that, and then Willie thought that we needed to have a show on TV. And so he started researching and trying to find who might be willing to put Duck Commander on TV. And the Outdoor Channel and a producer that has shows on Outdoor Channel, he connected with them and talked them into starting the Duck Commander TV show on Outdoor Channel. Then a Hollywood producer who happened to have grown up in Louisiana came to them and said, we think you have an opportunity to do a reality show. Your family's crazy. I'm from Louisiana, and I know how crazy you are. And we could pitch this to the networks and see if they might be interested in doing it. So that pilot was along the lines of something like you might see on Swamp People or something, like a narrator. You know, a guy would say, well, here comes the Robertsons, and now they're going fishing, and they're going to get in their boats, and they're going to go down the river.
We hated it. It was horrible.
And so it was that style of a show, and they would show the Robertsons going fishing and stuff like that. Well, when A&E came down, but they did bite. A&E did think this certainly has possibilities. When they came down and saw the family and saw that they were capable of doing it on their own without the narrated type thing, they just changed the whole idea. So then it was their idea, along with the producer, then to turning into the show that you see on TV. And that particular pilot never aired. Yes, sir.
How much money does Duck Dynasty generate annually?
He asked me, how much money does Duck Dynasty generate annually? I don't really know. You know, that would be A&E's business, and they don't really disclose that. A lot, I'm sure. I do know that the advertisers are very happy. The amount that they pay is based on a viewership of 4.5 million viewers. And so every time, every show's more than that. We're not talking about the reruns, we're talking about the initial airings. Being the average of 8.5 or 6.5, we're still well over what the advertisers expect and want to advertise in a show like that. So, again, I don't really know how much. I mean, I've seen, it's funny, I've watched these news reporters. One of them said one time that it generated $40 million, and the next one I saw said 60, and the next one now they're saying like 500 million. And I'm sure it's not that much, and that's just reporter talk, but somewhere between 40 million and 500, I'm sure is right. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever made a duck call before?
Have I ever made a duck call before? I have not. I have not. Phil used to think he was the only one who could make a duck call, you know, because it was an art. And it got so busy that he had to teach his son, Jace, how to make duck calls. And he was surprised that Jace could do that so well. And then, so he just turned it over to Jace to take care of it. And so Jace then hired Martin and Godwin to help him make duck calls about the same time that Cy came on board to make the reads. And those few people can't make 1.3 million duck calls. And so we hired a number of other people to help us make the duck calls. And when you say make, the barrels are made elsewhere, the wood is turned, the plastic is molded, and are sent to us in pieces. We have to make the reeds. The reeds are this big old giant round piece of plastic that Phil invented a cutter to cut the things the right size. You have to trim them to make them just the right size and everything, and then you have to have the art of putting them together and trimming them again and making them sound exactly like they should be. Again, Phil thought, you know, that's such an artist thing that nobody could do this with him. Well, he didn't know this, but we had now had like 20 people doing it to make all these calls, and he came in the office not too long ago, and we introduced him to the new duck call room with all these people in it. And so, you know, he kind of looked around, and so he went around to each person's bin where they would make the call and throw it in the box, and he blew one of every single one of the duck call makers, or assemblers, calls to trim, blow, you know, and do it. And he said, well, I guess somebody else can make these things. Because he said they were perfect. And so the art was in the design But you can be taught to put together a duck call properly and sound like, of course, what he's known for is nobody makes duck calls that sound exactly like a duck like he does. And we still treat every one of them. Now, like I said, probably 100,000 of them are going to duck hunters. The other 1.2 million went to kids and other people. But every one of those duck calls is still hand assembled, blown, tested. And so whether it never sees the light of day in a duck blind, it could be, because it's made to order, each one of them.
Until the show got big, Jace blew every single duck call that went out, every single one.
Like Phil did before him. Yes, sir.
John, you alluded to in the last question, the difference between Duck Dynasty and Duck Commander. Could you just explain that?
Yes, and that's a good question. The difference between Duck Dynasty and Duck Commander. Of course, the show is Duck Dynasty. That is A&E's trademark. And so if you see anything in the store that says Duck Dynasty on it, that is a licensee of A&E. They have created that Willie Loofah or little game or whatever like that, pajamas or whatever. It says Duck Dynasty on it. That is an A&E licensed product. It says Duck Commander on it, then it's one of ours. If you go in Walmart today and you see Duck Commander, you'll see some stuff that actually all we make is duck calls, DVDs, a few hats and shirts, and spice. All the other stuff you see in there that says Duck Commander are our licensees. And remember, that's what I did, is do the contracts to do the licenses with all these other people that make Duck Commander products. So Duck Dynasty, it's really an A&E related thing. Duck Commander, it's our company. Yes, sir.
How much of payroll expansion did merging with Mossberg for products do to your company with Duck Commander?
Ask the question again.
How big of an impact did merging with Mossberg for your products, how much did that affect the company?
You say merge, actually that's a licensee. So Mossberg has licensed the Duck Commander name to put on a line of their weapons. And so it's been very good. They've increased their business substantially, of course, which means more license fees to us. So yes, it has had an impact on Duck Commander through the additional license fees we received from Mossberg. Yes.
Do y'all talk to Mountain Man?
We talk to Mountain Man all the time.
Slowly, we talked.
I saw him in the airport. It's funny, I think I see more in airports than I see him anywhere else. He travels and makes talks as well as everyone else, and so in fact that's his main job now, is traveling and speaking very slowly. And so every time I see him, I say, "Where did you go? Where are you going?" And he tries to remember what his schedule is. So that he's a great guy too. Goes to church with us, and he was just, Willie's air conditioner repairman that was out in the yard one day, and they said, "You got any other characters around here?" And they said, "Well, let me introduce you to my air conditioner repairman." And here came Mountain Man.
He's got his own radio show now too, locally. So if you're patient enough, you can hear him say.
It's the fewest number of words said in any radio show.
I noticed our baseball players had to leave because they're traveling to Iowa tonight.
Yeah.
So, but if you were just to give general advice to young people getting ready to enter business, what would you tell them right now?
Well, follow your dreams. As Chris said earlier, though, God may have a different dream than you do, and so you need to be open for the unexpected. But get grounded in the Word, and whatever you do, just remember that the way to be successful is to follow Christ and do what He would do. Some people ask me, do you follow what the teachings of Jesus in your business? And I say, as well as I possibly can. Remember there was but also you need good mentors. Someone asked me one day, did you wear that bracelet, WWJD, what did Jesus do? What would Jesus do? And I said, well, actually I had two. I had one like that and one that said WWDD. And that was, what would Dad do? I would think about what my dad would do, another successful person that was a great entrepreneur, and mixing both what other successful people have done, following their example and following Christ's example, can certainly make you successful.
I guess this is related to that, and my last question, if no one else has one. You've talked about Christianity, but could you also now comment on character and how important that is to be successful in business? And maybe, have you dealt with people who haven't had character, and how has that affected you?
I haven't had to deal with that a lot. Well, I guess back in the discount store days and the warehouse days where we had 3,000 employees, you did have to deal with them, and you learn very quickly that that's not somebody you want to do business with. I was reading something the other day that talked about what causes employers to refer you, and this was a secular thing, but the words it said were just follow the teachings of Jesus. It was saying, be there on time, do what you say you're going to do, say please and thank you, and be a good employee. And so character's critical to, if you want to get anywhere, people's got to see you as having a good character.
And I think that one thing in business and life and family and just your whole Christian walk is for us to all realize that nobody is perfect. Nobody was perfect. The only perfect thing is the Word of God, and that's what we have to turn to find how we want to behave. If we want to know if we're doing the right thing, we just need to read James. We need to read Peter. Like, am I doing the right thing? Okay, well, let me look. Let me look in the Bible and see if I'm doing the right thing, because it'll tell you if you will or not. But one thing that's important to know, there's not one family in the Bible that God leads us to know about that was perfect. They had all kinds of flaws and all kinds of things went wrong in their lives. And the Robertsons, that's one thing they want to say with their message too. They're not the perfect family. They never were, they never have been, they're not going to be. Our family is not perfect. They've been through tragedies in their family. We've been through tragedies in our family. Poor decisions, things happen. But the bottom line is that we're still following God to the best of our ability, and we love each other unconditionally. We don't go through every day. We live on the same street. We live next door to Korie and Willie. We live next door to Alan and Lisa. We're across the street from my brother and sister, across the street from my mom and brother and sister. Johnny's sister's on the other side of Korie. Across from Korie is Jason and Missy. My aunt and uncle are right there. You can't live on the same street with people and not embrace unconditional love. And that's just the thing that you have to do to get along in life. And you have to realize that some things are better left unsaid. Some things you just pray about, wait for the next day, wake up, and see what happens. And we had, of course, with Willie wanting to marry Korie at 17 years old. That could have been a terrible spot for our family, but we chose not to do that. We don't hold that over them in any way. Love and adore them and their family, and once we let it go, we let it go. And that's how you run a family business. Our family business was Howard Publishing, and with Johnny's dad, our son worked there, I worked there. It was a family atmosphere that we kept. That business won Best Christian Workplace for 7 years in a row, which was great for us. We just were very honored by that, because we hired people from Harding. We hired, one time we had atheists work for us for several years, a couple of years. But the bottom line is, we were family in that we treated everybody like family. We loved everybody like family, and we respected each other's jobs and positions, and that's just true of anything you do in life, anything.